What's up, you guys? Today we are talking about the new Natural Finish Beauty Fluid Foundation by Gucci. I am in shade 120N, which is fair neutral. There are 40 different shades that Gucci offers in this foundation. And tonight we're going to have our wear test like we typically do, which has been pre-recorded with timestamps so you can see how it performed. But before we launch into that, I want to talk about the way Gucci has built this foundation so you know what we're looking for and the expectation that we're trying to live up to. First and foremost, obviously it's right in the name, this is a natural finish foundation. Per Gucci's website, that means that you can wear this as a barely there super sheer coverage foundation, or you can build it up to a natural looking full coverage foundation. You'll see in the wear test video, I definitely went more for the barely there approach, and you'll see what that level of coverage looks like. Today I am wearing it again, and I successfully built it up to a slightly more full coverage foundation. Other things we are looking for with this foundation, it is supposed to be lightweight, it is supposed to be long wearing, which I appreciate just calling it long wearing as opposed to pegging it as a 16-hour foundation or a 24-hour foundation. It's also supposed to be hydrating, and it is supposed to provide a naturally blurred finish post-application. Instructions for this foundation are actually to apply it with fingers and blend it out. You will see that there was a point in which I tried that. I went in with my standard foundation brush that I use in all of my wear tests, and I did struggle with it. I left all of that in so you will be able to see kind of how that goes. And what I have found after using it a couple times now is that it's actually easiest to apply with a beauty sponge, and you will see me resort to that finally in this video as well. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. I went in with my skin fully prepped, eyebrows done. All of the products that are already on my face will be linked in the description box below for you guys. We're going to go in with the foundation, and the first thing that I always test is the consistency. I know the consistency of foundations that I like to use the most, and this one is very different than what I typically use. The fact that I had to shake it right here should have given me a clue of what was to come. It is an extremely fluid foundation. Now, I will say that the second day that I went in and used this, after having shaken it a little bit more, I shook it a few more times. It came out a little bit thicker than what you just saw on the back of my hand there, but it is still much more of a fluid foundation than the creamier consistencies that you typically see me use. So you see me going in with the brush there on my forehead, and even though I was applying it with the brush, I was able to get pretty decent coverage. As I'm going in on my cheeks, where I have a little bit more uneven texture, some redness, some thin skin along the jawline where you can typically see the blueness of my veins, I started to have a little bit more difficulty getting it to blend out nice and even. Part of that problem, and part of the reason that they say probably not to use a brush to apply this foundation, is because it is so fluidy. Those brushes are going to just suck up the product as opposed to smoothing it out really well and evenly. I tried patting what was already on my face around with fingers, didn't find that it worked particularly well, so I resorted to a beauty sponge. This one was from Target. I believe it's a Sonia Kashuk sponge, but don't quote me on that. Once I finally got it coverage-wise where I wanted it, I did go ahead in and I set it with powder. And then for other face makeup, I went in with a little bit of my Guerlain Meteorites blush and an Inglot bronzer, which you'll see me show here as well. All of these products I will link below for you. And then I'm going to finish it out with just a really light, natural eye look using some products from Jones Road Beauty. Then I'm going to give you guys the timestamp, which if I'm not mistaken was around 11:30 in the morning. And this is the look that we are going to be carrying throughout the day. Looking at this coverage here, you can see it is very light. It is a very natural finish. I do think it lives up to that name. You can even see here some of my natural redness. You can really see my pores here. I think that was the thing that I found most disappointing when I initially applied it, was because it is such a thin liquidy foundation, it kind of just settled right into pores and fine lines. The coverage was very minimal, but as I've already discussed, you're able to build up past that if you want something a little bit more full coverage. So there's the timestamp there at 11:25. I came back 3 hours later at 2:25, and a couple things I noticed at the 3-hour mark. The first thing is that this is the first foundation I think I've ever tried where it looks better 3 hours in than it did right after application. I think the natural oil production of my skin and the way that it kind of settles into, like it builds itself as having a blurred finish, I think those factors combined really just let the foundation set up to a really beautiful, attractive appearance. Up close you can see It's not as though the coverage got any better. I didn't put enough of it on to have a full coverage there, but I still thought that it looked pretty much the same as it had when I applied in terms of where it may have worn off. The other thing I do at the 3-hour mark is an oil blot test. I have oily skin, and I wanted to see what the situation was here. Going in with the oil blot sheet here, you'll see that it really wasn't that bad. I think being a really lightweight foundation, being so thin, being so fluidy, the balance with the oil production in the skin was actually just spot on. So I gave it almost 4 hours before I checked in again here shortly after 6 p.m. and I really didn't notice an enormous difference from the 3-hour mark to, what would that be, the 7-hour mark. So looking at the skin here, the only thing that I could critique, I suppose, would be I started noticing it again sort of settling back into my pores. I was losing a little bit of coverage on my chin, but that was because I had gone for a walk and I had a scarf around my neck, so that's not really giving it a fair shot. So the other thing I tested there, you saw me sort of dabbing my face. Usually at this point, when you touch your face, the oil production is to the point where you feel like you could drag a finger through the makeup and leave a finger mark on your face. Didn't have any of that going on here, even after 7 hours. Another 4 hours later, I'd forgotten my iPhone, so there you saw on my watch, it was about 10:20 p.m. The most impressive thing about this check-in was that it really wasn't any different than the 6:15 check-in. So we are at 11 hours of wear here, and I really didn't notice the performance deteriorating from the 3-hour mark to the 11-hour mark, which is kind of unheard of with foundations. So I think that it goes without saying here that the long wearing box has been ticked by this foundation. You can kind of see there, again, it's settling into my pores. So that blurred finish effect that it talks about, I definitely think that you need to build it up a little bit more than that barely there finish to see that come into play. But at that 3-hour mark, that was kind of where it peaked in terms of the foundation blending with the natural oils of my skin to create a really nice, even effect. The way that I'm wearing it today, a little bit more full coverage than what I had in that wear test. I have not noticed that sort of visible pore effect. So like I said, I think you just need a little bit more in your foundation layering to get it to blur out. So looking back over the big boxes that we were trying to check, lightweight and long wearing. Long wearing, check, we've already got that. Lightweight, absolutely. It's been a long time since I've had a foundation that is too thin, too liquidy, too lightweight to be applied well with a brush, which is interesting because I find some foundations that are really thick and creamy also apply better with a sponge. So there's kind of just like a sweet spot for application. But the lightweightness of this foundation, I also want to segue that into a discussion about its hydrating effects. So I mentioned at that 3-hour mark that I felt like it had really hydrated and blurred my skin's imperfections beautifully without crossing over into being so oily that that oil blot sheet at the 3-hour mark came away like, wow, disgusting. And again, 7 hours in, when I was sort of dabbing my face, you all know that feeling where you can start to feel your makeup on your skin and you're ready to wash it off. I didn't have any of that. My skin felt hydrated, but not oily. So it did a really, really beautiful job there as well. So I feel like the review is pretty clear. I really did like this foundation, which I was relieved about because the price point is really high. For $68 US, I feel like you better be getting something that is a stellar performer, which this is. What I typically do for you guys at this point in the video is give you something to compare this to in the same price range and let you guys know which one I think is better or worse. I really can't do that in this video because I've never used a foundation quite like this. The texture is unique to me. The only other foundation that I've used recently in that price range is the Guerlain L'Essentiel foundation, which I really love, but it's completely different. So this one I think might be comparable to the infamous, what is it, the Armani Luminous Silk Fluid Foundation, because I know that one to be also very liquidy, but I do not have that one, so I can't speak to that. So unfortunately, I don't have anything to compare this to. All I can say is that if you are looking to invest in a designer level foundation, something in this price point, This one will not waste your money. I do like that it's actually buildable the way that it says it's buildable. So unlike something like the Il Makiage After Party Foundation that I recently reviewed for you guys, that one is full coverage. It is only full coverage. Full coverage is what it does. It is an extra maximalist foundation. This one, you actually can go sheer coverage, as you saw in the video. You can go something more medium to full, like what I've got going on right now. A lot of foundations that bill themselves as buildable actually aren't. I don't know if you guys have found that to be true, but I certainly have. So the nice thing about this foundation is I really think it would work for anybody, regardless of what your personal makeup aesthetic is. So that's what I've got for you guys. All of the products I used in this video I will link for you in the description box below. You can always find products listed down there with direct links for you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate your viewership as always, and I'll see you again in my next video. Have a great night.